But instead of the hitman, a team of plainclothes officers surrounded her, their guns drawn. "Abigail Montgomery, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder," one of them said. Abigail's eyes widened in shock. "What? This is a mistake." But as she was cuffed and led away, she caught sight of John standing in the doorway, his expression cold and triumphant. "Happy New Year," he said quietly. The New Year's Eve fireworks lit up the sky in dazzling bursts of color, but within the Montgomery household, the fallout from Abigail's arrest was anything but celebratory. The truth had been unearthed, but the wounds left behind would take far longer to heal. Abigail's arrest sent shockwaves through the family and the business world. The media feasted on the story of a wealthy heiress conspiring to murder her brother's wife, painting her as a cold-hearted villain. During her trial, damning evidence, including phone records and surveillance footage, left no room for doubt about her guilt. Abigail, for her part, remained defiant. "You think you've won," she spat at John during a private meeting before her sentencing. "But I've planted a seed you'll never escape. That child will always remind you of me." John didn't flinch. "You'll spend the rest of your life in prison, Abigail. That's all I care about." Abigail was sentenced to life imprisonment, her plans to destroy John and claim the Montgomery legacy crumbling before her eyes. With Abigail out of the picture, Mary found herself suffocating under the weight of her guilt. She avoided John as much as possible, her once loving gaze now filled with shame and self-loathing. One evening, as they sat in their living room, Mary finally broke down. "John, there's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice trembling. John looked up from his newspaper, his expression unreadable. "Go on." Tears streamed down her face as she confessed everything, the affair, the baby, her betrayal. She expected John to explode, to yell, to storm out. But instead, he remained calm, his face an impenetrable mask. "I already knew," he said quietly. Mary's eyes widened in shock. You knew?" "Yes," John said, setting his newspaper aside. "I've known for a while now. But it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is where we go from here." Mary stared at him, her heart breaking all over again. "How can you forgive me after everything I've done?" John sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Forgiveness isn't easy, Mary. But I made a vow to you, and I meant it. Besides," he hesitated, then continued, "I've got my own secrets. I'm not as blameless as you think." For years, John had carried a secret of his own. He was infertile. He had known since his early 20s but had kept it hidden, fearing the stigma and the strain it might put on his relationships. When Mary's pregnancy was announced, he knew immediately that the child wasn't his. But instead of confronting Mary, he chose to accept the baby as his own. After all, he reasoned, he had always wanted to be a father, and this child was his chance. "Wait," Mary said, her voice breaking. "You knew you couldn't have children? And you let me go on thinking I was the cause of our childlessness?" John nodded. "I didn't see the point in telling you. I thought it would only make things worse." Mary's heart twisted with a mix of emotions, anger, relief, and a strange sense of gratitude. Despite everything, John was still willing to stand by her. The months that followed were a slow and painful process of rebuilding. Mary gave birth to a healthy baby boy, and though his true parentage loomed like a specter over their lives, John treated him as his own. He named the boy Michael, after his late father, and poured all his love and energy into raising him. For John, Michael represented a fresh start, a chance to create the family he had always dreamed of. For Mary, Michael was both a blessing and a reminder of her sins. She dedicated herself to being the best mother she could be, hoping to atone for her past mistakes. Even from prison, Abigail's shadow loomed over their lives. Occasionally, she would send cryptic letters to John, filled with veiled threats and bitter accusations. He ignored them, refusing to let her poison his happiness. For Mary, the letters were a stark reminder of the life she had left behind. She burned them as soon as they arrived, determined to move forward and protect her family. Over time, the wounds began to heal. John and Mary worked tirelessly to rebuild their marriage, attending therapy and rediscovering the love that had brought them together in the first place. Michael grew into a bright and curious child, unaware of the complicated history that surrounded his birth. To him, John was his father, and Mary was his mother, nothing more, nothing less. As the years passed, the Montgomery family found peace. Abigail's name became a distant memory, a cautionary tale they chose not to dwell on. For John, the chaos Abigail had unleashed had ultimately brought him what he had always wanted, a family. And though the road to get there had been fraught with betrayal and pain,